Hey everybody, it's Chris, and in my last video, I did a subclass ranking for Warlocks, and I included all the 2024 Player's Handbook subclasses, as well as previous subclasses that we've seen in other source books. And I ended up with a pretty tight grouping with the exception of the Undying subclass. That's from Sword Coast Adventures Guide, a source book that's well known for having really wonky balance. There's some really bad subclasses there, and Undying is one of them. So that was a bit of an outlier, but otherwise, the grouping was pretty tight. I mean, I had Fathomless at the bottom with 10 and Fiend at the top with 15. That's not that much difference. I also had three subclasses tied for first place with 15, or essentially tied. I had a way of breaking the ties, but by 14th level, we have three subclasses that operate with pretty much the same level of power. Then we had three 13s after that, and then an 11 and a 10. So, not too bad. However, one of the things that affected the rankings and the star totals, especially at the lower levels, was the way that spells operate with Warlock subclasses. Because in the 2024 rules, they introduced, or they revised four subclasses, and one of the revisions they made is the Warlock spells they get for their subclass that are used to be added to the Warlock spell list, and thus you could select them. Now we're all automatically prepared. So basically, they end up with a whole bunch of extra spells, and all the spells of their subclass automatically prepared. And if they're good spells, that's great. It means that your Warlock will have a lot more versatility in how to use those spell slots depending on the situation they're in, and that is powerful. So what we did end up seeing is, if we look at this list, we're going to see Fiend was number 1, Archfey was number 2, Great Old One was number 3, and Celestial was number 4. This was pretty much the case all the way through the levels. And those are all subclasses from the Player's Handbook because, you automatically prepare all those spells and they get a little bit of a power boost, and so they're better than the other subclasses. And one of the reactions I had immediately, as soon as I released that video to patrons, I had messages from people saying, in our games, we're just going to house rule the old subclasses to give them their spells as automatic preparations too. It's only fair because that is obviously the direction they're going. And I absolutely understand that. My first instinct whenever I hear about that kind of house rule, because it is a house rule, right? They haven't done errata for those previous subclasses making that change. So my first instinct is hesitation, because Warlocks are powerful. And do we need to go back and take a bunch of subclasses that we already knew were quite powerful and make them more powerful? Is that going to be a situation where it makes them so much more powerful that they once again eclipse the subclasses in the Player's Handbook? That's maybe not ideal, right? Do we always want the same subclasses to be the best subclasses? Do we want Genie to be the best always? And I think about this because it's come up before. A few years ago, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything came out, and they changed sorcerers. And we got two new sorcerer subclasses, Aberrant Mind and Clockwork Soul, and they both got a bunch of extra spells prepared. No other sorcerer subclass had ever had that before. And one of the questions I was immediately asked was, should all the older subclasses be given a bunch of extra spells known in order to make up for that? And my hesitation there is, when I looked at it, I found Divine Soul jumped up to be more powerful than Aberrant Mind, more powerful than Clockwork Soul. It becomes the most powerful subclass by a fair amount, because that subclass is made in a way that doesn't really work, because they already have an expanded spell list. So if you give them a whole bunch of extra spells on top of that, it's too much. So I immediately hesitate whenever I hear, we should just do this house rule because that's obviously the way they're going in the future. Is that going to create imbalance? So what I wanted to do is kind of look at my ratings for the Warlock subclasses, the ones that are not in the Player's Handbook, and consider if those Warlock spells were automatic preparations, how much would it affect my rankings, and how would that affect this chart you see in front of you right here. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go through each of the subclasses. We're going to look at what spells they have, consider if they were automatic preparations, how much would that affect the star rankings based on each of these levels, and where would that place them on this list at the end. Because if our Player's Handbook subclasses suddenly end up at the bottom of the list, I mean, they won't end up at the bottom. Undying is still going to end up at the bottom, but at the bottom of the list, ignoring Undying, then maybe that's not ideal. So we're going to start with the Undead Warlock, and basically at level 3, they would get Bane, False Life, Blindness, Deafness, and Phantasmal Force added to their spells prepared, rather than just to the Warlock spell list. And I've kind of color-coded them here. Might make them harder to see on your screen. If so, I apologize, but I'm going to read them out anyways. So we have Bane, False Life, Blindness, Deafness, and Phantasmal Force. None of these spells I consider ultra powerful, but none of these spells I consider very weak either. These are middle-of-the-road spells. To me, the standout for a Warlock would be Blindness, Deafness, because with a Warlock, you have pack slots, and pack slots automatically increase in levels. That really makes it good when you have spells that upcast really well. Blindness, Deafness is one of those spells. If you cast it at 2nd level, it targets 1 creature. If you cast it at 3rd level, it targets 2 creatures, etc. Right? 1 additional creature per spell level. So that's really good. So Blindness, Deafness scales really well, meaning that I considered it green here in that it's above average in terms of what a Warlock could get. The other 3, False Life, Bane, and Phantasmal Force. Bane and False Life do upcast, but not as dramatically as Blindness, Deafness does. And they're both okay spells. And then Phantasmal Force is also an okay spell, doesn't really upcast. So how much better does that make that? Well, the Undead started with Form of Dread, which I gave 3 stars to, and I figure that we can up that to 4 stars based on those spells. Level 6, they get Grave Touched, which I don't consider all that great. But with the expanded spell list of Phantom Steed and Speak with Dead, this is pretty good. I mean, Speak with Dead is very circumstantial. I don't consider it a great choice for an invocation or as a pack slot. But Phantom Steed is fantastic for a Warlock because it is a top tier ritual. And normally it's just available to wizards. But giving it as to a Warlock means they have uses for their spells that are really powerful that aren't going to use those really precious pack slots. So Phantom Steed is a great add-on for the Undead Warlock. And I will note, we saw 2 subclasses for Warlock updated in Unearthed Arcana, and one of them was the Undead Warlock, and they took Phantom Steed away, which was, I consider, a pretty significant nerf to the subclass, because I would have taken Phantom Steed like that. You give me 2 spells that I don't care about as much prepared, I'd rather have the option to take Phantom Steed. And if you had put Phantom Steed automatically prepared, that would have been great. And so it's pretty easy for me to look at level 6 and think, if you can automatically prepare Phantom Steed and Speak with Dead, that's better. So 2 stars easily becomes 3 stars. And with level 10, we get Necrotic Husk, which is a pretty good feature. And then we're going to add these spells. Death Ward, which is a tough cast with pack slots. Greater Invisibility, I don't think is that great. One of my main issues with Greater Invisibility is by the level you get it, things like Blind Sight and True Sight are becoming very common. So it becomes really unreliable. Then we have Anti-Life Shell, which is a decent spell, and Cloud Kill, which is not. It uses poison damage. The damage isn't all that great for Cloud Kill anyways, but it also uses poison damage, which is super unreliable. This is not a great spell list. So when I look at Necrotic Husk, and I look at this expanded spell list, I gave Necrotic Husk 4 stars. Does this make it a 5-star feature? I can't justify 5 stars here, so I'm going to keep it at 4 stars. So then let's go to our final level, level 14, which is Spirit Projection, which is a good feature, and there are no additional spells gained here. So the rating doesn't change. So we're going to move on to the Hexblade. Now, I should also mention there's an Unearthed Arcana for Hexblade, and I've got a whole video where I discuss that. I'll link it up above, so you know my opinions on that. But what I'm looking at today isn't the Unearthed Arcana version of Hexblade, which is very different. I'm looking at the old version of Hexblade if we use this house rule where their Warlock spells were automatically prepared. At level 3, they get Shield, Wrathful Smite, Blur, and Branding Smite. Now, Shield, I mentioned in my ranking video, it depends. This is a hard one to rank because Shield would be top tier if you are multi-classed and have first level spell slots to expend on it. If you are restricted to only pack slots, it's not that great because even at level 3 when we get it, our pack slots are already second level. And Shield doesn't upcast. It's basically the same spell, even if you cast it with a 5th level pack slot, which eventually you would be, or you probably wouldn't be, because it's better probably to take the hit than to expend an entire pack slot on one casting of Shield. So, you know, I said it's still above average because there's a lot of play there. If I was playing a Hexblade, I'd just make sure to multi-class to get first level spell slots. Wrathful Smite doesn't upcast all that well. It does upcast, and it's a decent spell, but we're already casting it with the second level spell slot. I don't know if it would be my first option. Blur is okay. Branding Smite is now replaced with Shining Smite. This is one of the best Paladin Smite spells, so I think it is definitely above average. A pretty good expanded spell list at level 3, I would say. The Hexblade had 4 stars before at level 3. I think that ups them to 5 stars. There's just a lot there, even though Hex Warrior is largely redundant now with the new Pact of the Blade. There's still a lot there. You're getting your proficiency with medium armor and shields and Hexblade's Curse and these spells. I think that's 5 stars. So level 6, they get Accursed Spectre, and I talked about this in my last video. In practice, I find it very difficult to use, so I could only give it 2 stars. Then we're going to get an expanded spell list, which is Blink and Elemental Weapon. One thing I'll note is Elemental Weapon, I don't think is a great spell, but its 5th level upcasting is pretty good. And basically, we're going to get both an additional +1 to hit and another d4 of damage. So it has a really nice upcasting at level 5 specifically, which is where pack slots settle in. So I do think it's actually better for a Warlock, or a reasonably good choice for a Warlock. And Blink is an okay defensive spell that doesn't get any upcast benefits. I look at that, plus Accursed Spectre, and I think we're up to 3 stars. And we have Armor of Hexes, which I considered again to be a little below average, not terrible. Then we're going to add an expanded spell list of Phantasmal Killer, which is not a good spell. Staggering Smite, which is a pretty good spell, especially if you're playing Pact of the Blade. Banishing Smite, which is decent, especially if you're playing Pact of the Blade. And Cone of Cold. And Cone of Cold, I would say, is okay. Synaptic Static is probably the better spell if you can hit as many enemies. But the advantage of Cone of Cold is you have that 60-foot cone, so it is a bigger area. You can potentially get significantly more enemies than a Synaptic Static, and in that case, it is the better spell. I mean, give me both, right? Both is better. So I think that's enough to give this 3 stars. So let's look at Fathomless. So at level 3, they get Tentacle of the Deeps. I gave this 2 stars. Then they're going to get an expanded spell list. And we're going to get Create or Destroy Water, which, I mean, I shouldn't need to tell you is really circumstantial. It's okay. You need to take down a fog cloud or something like that. It can be okay. Thunderwave, by level 3, I don't want Thunderwave. It's not really a good spell for Warlocks to have. Gust of Wind, I don't think is a great spell. Silence can be okay, though it does not upcast, so This is not the best spell list you could be getting. I gotta say, I'll take Creator, Destroy, Water, and Silence because once in a while they're the right answer. But as I gain levels, do I really want to be expending 5th level spell slots on either of those spells? No. So yeah, I can't give this an extra star, I don't think. So let's look at level 6. And we're going to get Oceanic Soul and Guardian Coil, which I gave 3 stars to. Now we're going to add Lightning Bolt and Sleet Storm. And I think these are both decent spells. Lightning Bolt, of course, has the big long line. I did a video not that long ago where I talked about how you can hit a reasonable amount of area with Lightning Bolt if you do it between squares, because you can actually go 2 squares wide with it, according to the rules. And then Sleet Storm is an okay battlefield control spell, and it does not upcast, but I still think it's 3rd level, so it's not that big a deal if we end up expending a 4th or 5th level spell slot for it, if it's the right answer. So I think we've increased our power level here, so I think we're good going from 3 to 4 stars. At level 10, we're going to get Grasping Tentacles. I gave 3 stars to this feature, and we are going to add Control Water and Summon Elemental. I don't consider either of those great. Control Water is circumstantial. Summon Elemental, I'd say is one of the weaker summon spells. Then we have Bigby's Hand, which is a good spell, and Cone of Cold, which I already talked about. Does this turn this into a 4-star feature? I think so. So Genie is the most complicated, so I'm going to go over that last. I'll do the Undying first. Undying is a terrible subclass. Giving it its spells is not going to save it. At level 3, I gave 2 stars to Among the Dead, and I was super generous to do so. We're going to add False Life. Okay. Ray of Sickness. It's okay, but not great. Definitely not reliable. Blindness, Deafness is pretty good for a Warlock. And Silence. Does this make this 3 stars? If I look at the other subclasses that I gave 3 stars to for features, I don't think so. I think I was very generous to give this 2 stars. So I'm still going to give it 2 stars. I guess what I could say is, at least it's not a generous 2 stars. It now actually earns 2 stars. Then we have Defy Death, which is terrible. I gave it 1 star. What are we going to add? We're going to add Fiend Death, terrible spell, and Speak with Dead, a super, super circumstantial spell. We haven't really added very much here. This is still 1 star. And we have Undying Nature, which is terrible. And we're going to add Aura of Life. I don't know. It doesn't upcast. Death Ward also doesn't upcast. Circumstantial. Contagion doesn't work on everything. Legend Lore, once in a while. I mean, these all have circumstantial uses. All 4 of them. If I put that along with this terrible, terrible feature, is this worth 2 stars? Maybe. It's maybe worth 2 stars, so I'm going to give it 2 stars. To be generous, I think it's generous to up it to 2 stars, but I'm going to, technically speaking, I will say the expanded spell list, if they're automatically prepared, is the best thing they get at 10th level. That's sad. So the Genie is hard to rank because, of course, there's 4 different options, and they're going to give you 4 different selections of spells. So I figured if I'm going to, change rankings for the Genie, I have to kind of consider what would be our best option in terms of which of these 4 selections to make, and how much would that improve our overall star rating. Because we look at level 3 here, and the Genie gets Thunderwave and Gust of Wind. I don't think that helps Genie at all at level 3. If we look at Dow with Sanctuary and Spike Growth, probably helps it a bit. So, I would consider more likely that we're choosing Dow than Genie. But yeah, at level 3, everyone's going to get Detect Evil and Good, super circumstantial, no real upcast there. Phantasmal Force is okay at level 3. I don't think it's going to remain okay as we gain levels. Dow gets Sanctuary, which is a good spell, but it's a 1st level spell. There's no upcast for it. Spike Growth is a great spell, but there's no upcast for it, so I think it's good at level 3. But if we continue our Warlock at higher levels, I don't want to spend 5th level spell slots to cast Spike Growth. Then their Genie gets Thunderwave and Gust of Wind, which are terrible. Afridi gets Burning Hands. I definitely don't want to be casting that. Scorching Ray, maybe once in a while. It does upcast. Fog Cloud can be okay, but doesn't upcast. Blur, same thing, doesn't upcast. This is not a fantastic spell list for the Genie at level 3. The standout here would be Spike Growth at level 3, but it just isn't so great if we continue on in levels. Now, I gave the Genie 2 stars only. So is that enough for 3 stars? Probably. Probably makes the Genie average, because I think it was a high 2 before. So I'm okay giving it 3 stars. Then we go on to level 6, and we're going to add Elemental Gift. This is the really early Flight with Hover. Good feature. And all of the choices will get Create Food and Water, which, I mean, in the right circumstance can be a good spell. But most of the time you don't use it. Meld into Stone is circumstantial. Wind Wall, circumstantial, not that great. Might even be red, not yellow. Afridi probably gets the best option here. Fireball. Fireball is a good spell, especially at level 6. Now, when I get to level 9 and cast Synaptic Static with the same spell slot, I'm not sure Fireball is good anymore. But certainly at level 6, it's good. And then Merid, Sleet Storm can be okay. Depends on the kind of party you're working with, but it's battlefield control. Doesn't upcast, though. I'd consider probably taking Afridi and then looking at level 6. Is level 6 better? Because I gave it 4 stars before. Does this make it a 5-star feature? Obviously, I don't think so. I thought about it, but I don't think adding Fireball to Elemental Gift makes it 5 stars. So let's look at level 10. Now here, the Genie doesn't get our best selections. They get Greater Invisibility and Seeming. Our best selections are with the Tao that gets Stone Shape, which is a very useful utility spell, and Wall of Stone. Wall of Stone is fantastic. And Warlocks don't really have wall spells, so that's really good. And they all get Phantasmal Killer and Creation. I don't think either of those are great. Fire Shield for Afridi is decent, and Flame Strike is not very good. Genie gets Greater Invisibility and Seeming. They both can be okay, but circumstantial. Merid, Control Water, Cone of Cold. Talked about those before as well. Those aren't bad, right? Like Cone of Cold is okay. Control Water is okay in the right circumstances. To me, these standouts here, though, are Stone Shape and Wall of Stone with the Tao, which probably had our best selections at level 3, not our best selections at level 6. Is that enough to improve Sanctuary Vessel? Yes, because Sanctuary Vessel was only worth 2. I think this makes it average. So it's probably worth 3. And then we have Limited Wish at 14th level. And of course, we get the expanded spell list at level 17. And Genie Warlocks can select Wish. Now, I put Wish as blue because I think Wish is the best spell in the game. I can't ignore that. Is it that much better than True Polymorph, though? Because we're only selecting 1 9th level spell with a Warlock. That's unfortunately the way that our Mystic Arcanum works. We're only going to have 1 9th level spell we can cast once per day. Wish is great, but Warlocks can all select True Polymorph. So if Wish is the best spell in the game, how close is True Polymorph to being the best spell in the game? Very close. I'm not sure. There's Prismatic Wall, there's Shape Change, there's True Polymorph. These are all really, really powerful spells. So I'm not sure what order I'd put them in, but they're all like right below Wish. So I don't think it's a huge boost in power to give them Wish. And I gave 5 stars already, so we're not going to give it more than 5 stars. So if we look at everything, and I rank them according to the tie-breaking system that I talked about in my last video, we go from this is the old ranking. So Fiend, Archfey, Great Old One, and Celestial, our player's handbook subclasses are 1, 2, 3, 4. And then Undead and Genie are technically tied with Celestial once we get to level 14. They just are a little bit behind moving up to level 14. Then Hexblade, then Fathomless, then Undying. With our new rankings, this is what we look at. Now look at this. So we have Fiend with 15, still number 1. Archfey with 15, still number 2. Undead with 15, now number 3. Great Old One with 15, now number 4. So in our top 4, we still have 3 Player's Handbook subclasses. Genie has worked its way into number 5, and look at 1 through 5. 15, 15, 15, 15, 15. Then Hexblade is a little below with a 14, but still really good. Then Celestial, which is our final Player's Handbook subclass, at 13. That's only 2 points back from number 1, and they're at number 7. And then Fathomless has 12. That's 1 point back from Celestial and only 3 points back from number 1. So Undying is still terrible. We can't fix Undying by giving them more spells. They need decent subclass features. But if I look here, I've got Fiend at number 1, Fathomless at number 8. 3 points separate all these subclasses, and 5 of them are tied at number 1. So can we give those old subclasses their spells automatically without being concerned about them overshadowing the Player's Handbook subclasses? Yes. Yes, we can. I think I would now, after taking a close look at it, I'd recommend doing that. So if you are a DM and you are considering doing that, I'm looking at this, and by my analysis, I could be wrong, but this is my best analysis at this time without playtesting it, is that I think you improve subclass balance. You don't create a situation where the old subclasses leapfrog the new ones. Now, if you've watched the end, thank you so much. I do this full time. Your viewership means so much to me. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And if you would be willing to support this content, there is a link in the video description to my Patreon. And I want to thank some of my patron supporters today. Today I'm thanking my Archmage level supporters. We have Shura, Astonish, Awesome Face, BG4711, Brandon Sargent, Christophe, Condor, Cinnamon, Dash Panther, David Lotz, David W. Skibbins, Eric H., Eleanor, Homoa, Ido, Isaac Leister, James Thomas, Jean-Baptiste Blanchette, Jeremy Brown, Jonathan Lexi, Justice Valdez, K.J. Aurelio, Kevin Casey, Crosidian, Quoth, Matt Schwobel, Migish, Reichenstahl, Saint Vidar, Stephen Edmondson, TUM, and the Al Gore Rhythm. Thanks so much for your support, and until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.